The Marine Corps requires leaders of all ranks to have a deep understanding of war and the employment of force. MCDP 1 reminds Marines that the military profession is a thinking profession. Every Marine is expected to be a student of the art and science of war. It goes on to say that every Marine has an individual responsibility to study the profession of arms. Self directed study in the art and science of war is at least equal in importance to maintaining physical condition and should receive at least equal time. The Marine Corps Association understands the critical importance of ensuring that Marines are as mentally ready for combat as they are physically ready. That is why we offer an entire page dedicated to wargaming on our website. We have recommendations for both tabletop board games as well as computer games. And for Marine Corps Association members, there is a discount code for War Game Design Studios that you can find on the website. War games are a great way to immerse yourself in history and to put yourself in the shoes of the great leaders of history. Go beyond guided instruction and experience the thrill of wargaming. Check us out at mca-marines.org/decision-making-exercises/wargaming-2. That's mca-marines.org/decision-making-exercises/wargaming-2. Take your training to the next level. Hey, Scuttlebutt listeners, thank you for joining us. I am Vic. I'm here with Nancy.
Hey, everyone.
And we are welcoming Lieutenant Colonel now, Tom Schueman, back to the show for his third time. I think that's right. This is your third time?
Sounds right.
Yeah, sounds about right. Yeah. But this is kind of cool because we are now seeing the progression through the career. So a huge shout out and congratulations to Lieutenant Colonel Schueman, recently promoted. Well, thanks for being on the show, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Always happy to join you guys.
Yeah, this is so cool. So as the title suggests, we're catching up with old friends. We hadn't talked to you, God, in almost 2 years. And so how's everything going? How you're in Norfolk now, correct?
I'm in Norfolk, and it is a nice sunny day in the midst of many kind of rainy days out here in Virginia. That was certainly the first kind of acclimatization that had to happen coming out here to Norfolk, is leaving Camp Pendleton. I was there for a couple months before I headed out here, and 75 and sunny, and it was winter.
Yeah.
Rude awakening.
It's different when you get that SoCal softness.
Oh man, it happens quick too, man.
Yeah, out here in Norfolk, I got out here 15 January. We talked last. I was at Newport. I was in Newport at
That's
the
right.
Naval War College. So I was also at PME. I was JPME 1. They consider this JPME 2. And so from Newport, I reported to 3rd Battalion, 5th Marines. Checked in to serve as the OPSO. Had a book come out right around that time.
Yeah, that we did. We talked when Always Faithful hit. So we talked last time. Yeah. So I think we're just you just recently moved to the San Clemente, I believe, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
So kind of did a little book stuff for a couple weeks there, and then started doing grunt stuff for the last 2 years. And so checking back into a unit that has a lot of meaning to me was really special. I think San Mateo, or the 62 area in general, I often consider it's my home. It'll always be a home to me. It's where I discovered responsibility. It's where a lot of me becoming a man happened in that place. And it's just this little bit of infantry heaven up there on North Camp Pendleton. And just to get to walk that ground again, and go back to that CP that I checked in. What was that? Probably August 2009, and I checked back in 2022. Um, so 11, 10, 11 years later, pretty special.
Yeah, what was that experience like? I know for me, coming back as a field grade officer to Camp Delmar, Third Tracks, place where I sort of grew up, very similar sort of experiences where I felt like I owed a ton, at least if not to the unit, but at least to the legacy of those officers who just weren't going to let me suck anymore, or let me, continue to be an awful human being. And so, and then I found that just sort of the battle rhythm, because we were just coming out of the only one field grade officer per, major subordinate command. And so the tempo was just still really high. And it was a hard thing for me, at least, to sort of balance the teep and then the mentorship piece. How did you feel coming in and stepping in and such a, one of the key billets of the battalion after, so much time away?
Yeah, the two initial differences is as a field grade officer versus a lieutenant. One, I find that this is an odd one. As a major, I always found myself looking at the walls and like looking at all the pictures and reading all the plaques. So I'm a big now I'm like this history guy, and I don't know, I never kind of paid attention to the walls, but the walls really kind of tell a story in the Marine Corps. Every CP you walk through, the Marine Corps does a great job of kind of telling its story there. And so just and then like you see some of the plaques, like, oh, like I was part of that. Like
Yeah.
You actually kind of become part of that history. And so it's like the past and the present all kind of colliding there. And so yeah, I every time I go into a new CP, I just it's like I'm almost at a museum. I just walk around looking at all the walls. But the other part about being a field grade officer is you read a lot more doctrine, like the pubs.
Yeah.
Could not believe how often I was reading pubs, looking into pubs, and because as a lieutenant, it's like, well, just going to set up my base of fire and I'm going to flank, throw some grenades at it, maybe.
Yeah.
It's just let's just be violent, and when that doesn't work, we'll be more violent. And once you get to being the OPSO and you're communicating these plans to hire and talking to colonels and generals, you really got to come correct. And before you start deviating, you better know that known point that you're about to shift from. And so spent a ton of time in the books, and in terms of the tempo and the teep. Yeah, the fleet is a beast. It doesn't stop. Does not stop. The Marine Corps has not slowed down. I don't think it ever will slow down. And when you're in the operating forces, you are operating, and it is a full sprint place, no half steps, and got right back in it. And so the battalion had already, they were about 5 or 6 months into the workup when I checked in. But most of the staff was still new or coalescing. Not all the company commanders were there yet. So still pretty early in the pre-deployment cycle when I checked in there. But I got to shape much of the teep. Of course, there's like higher exercises that you don't have a vote. But a lot of the teep or what we developed campaign plans and in accordance with the teep or in conjunction with the teep. I would always say, like, if things suck around here, it starts with me.
Right.
Like I control the battalion. Like I run the battalion. I come up with the plans for the battalion. And so there's no one to blame if like, hey man, this unit like totally sucks. It's like, okay, well, that's an indictment. And so
Right.
I, I, I never, I felt fully responsible for the TEEP because I managed it and I produced it as the operations officer. And so uh, I don't want to complain about it because hopefully it was all right. But you have to ask my troops. But it's such a I love the problem set of being an operations officer. Let's say as opposed to being the executive officer, in the sense that like my problem every day is how do I make these grunts better at killing people?
Right.
Like that, like at the end of the day, I got to make these grunts better at violence, and make them more survivable to come home to be great American citizens and to their wives, to their families. So like that's the problem every day is like how do I make them better at killing stuff and how do I make them better at more survivable? And so that's an awesome problem to have. Whereas there's the old shenanigans, also never stop. Just like the operations don't stop. Somebody's going to do something a little bit silly, ill-advised, sometimes not.
Young men doing young men things with money in their pocket.
That's
Say
like,
it isn't so.
yeah, yeah. But it's the opposite. I was like, that's really not my problem. And so, of course, unless it becomes like a risk to mission, but it's like I get all the fun stuff of being a grunt, the fighting and the shooting and the blowing stuff up, and I don't have to really deal with kind of the sucky parts of the job. And so it's certainly like there's something very special about being a commander, platoon commander, company commander, battalion commander, where you bear the full weight of the responsibility of in that responsibility. It's like very rewarding. And so like that's not quite there as an operation officer, even though I take full responsibility for the battalion, and anything the battalion fails to do is I put on me. I'm still ultimately not the guy who is accountable for every Marine's poor decision. Whereas the XO's battle rhythm each day is like not as fun. It's not as fun. And,
Yeah, so I didn't have the benefit. I was the Logo and then the XO, so I didn't even get to do the cool stuff. And I'll tell you, man, XO, it's like Friday nights, Saturday nights, they are not yours. And I learned that the hard way. Like, hey, this guy tried to come through the gate. What are you gonna do about it? Like, I can't come through the gate right now. I don't know what you're talking about. Like, I'm as drunk as he was. I just wasn't stupid enough to try to drive. So yeah.
the workload as the OPSO, because the ops section, I really think it's like kind of the heartbeat of the battalion, so
Sure.
like, I think the ops section probably works the longest hours and grinds the hardest. But when we secure for the day, or even though it's probably the late evening at that point, like, yeah, no one's calling me to say like, hey, so-and-so did something dumb. It's like,
Yeah.
So, what do you think you learned from the experience?
ooh, I learned how to plan, and that is a skill that was developed over time. I became better at it over time. To be able to think in the future and say like, this is where this we want this thing to be at some point. Here's where we are now, and to be able to develop a plan to get to that place uh, is a skill. Leading planning teams, OPTs. I sucked at it, and I'm maybe a little bit better at it now. And leading a staff is very hard. And leading a staff to come up with an operations order, or to develop a plan to the ops is like integrating all of that. And so and it's not fun work usually. and to find ways to inspire, persuade, influence, threaten, whatever you got to do to get your staff to continue to build the plan and to move forward in the plan. That's a real art. And so I think, when I'm talking like stuff from where a company grade to field grade, like the art of planning, the art of leading a staff, synchronizing operations with logistics, with, like I spent the first like 6 months just really thinking about C2, like how do you command and control? And it's a lot more complicated these days because there's new systems, new radios where it used to just be like a 119, maybe like an HF radio. Now there's kind of a lot more to it. And you used to just set up your COC in the main and just be a big gigantic tent, and you just can put all the antennas up that you want. And
Yeah.
now it's this signature management stuff, and it's like you go dig a ditch and hide in a bush, and you can only key out, and so you're trying to reduce your signature management. So signature management was hardly considered during the global war on terror, and now signature management informs how we operate, and it makes it much more tough. It's a lot tougher to operate that way. So had to think a lot about C2. I'm like a little bit like of an amateur commo these days. I can't tell you like exactly how the waveforms like work with the sun, but I can talk C2 fluently, whereas as I couldn't before. Logistics considerations, again, it's not something that it's just like, hey, give me my bullets. Need more bullets. And and staying synchronized with your logistics guys so important, because I'll often be like, hey, we're going to do this and that and this, and then my S4 will be like, no, we're not. Like,
Yeah.
like we can't support that. And I'm like,
That's a cool idea. How are you gonna do it?
and so like staying close with my S4, and then it's like ops intel fires. I had a great little nucleus of with my FSCC, my weapons company commander, Mike Franco, and Trey Gregory, and eventually Alex Hornbuckle, my S2s. Like you get really tight with that team. You spend so much time huddled together and working on problems. And so integrating intel and fires with operations, getting to mentor the company commanders. And that was a really rewarding part of my job is just working with the company commanders. And I went back and worked for my old boss. I worked for him for about 6 months before I went to recon back in 2011 when I was with 3.5, and he was the company commander. I was his company XO at the time. And he's like, first off, he's brilliant, like super smart, and then he's perfectionist, and he has very high standards. And he's super high functioning in every capacity, like mentally, morally, physically. He never would ask a Marine to do anything that he doesn't do. So there's no hypocrisy in his leadership. But I was so thankful for him when I was a lieutenant, because I had not experienced that from my previous company commander, in terms of forcing me to grow, and Captain Greco, the time now Lieutenant Colonel Greco, I developed so much just in the short time I initially worked for him, because I was like, oh, this is tough, but this is like why I want to be a Marine. I don't want to be a Marine because it was easy. I want to be a Marine. I want to be challenged, and he's a challenging guy to work for. But I'm certainly a much better officer for having done so, and just to see that he'll make the decision, he'll establish the priorities, he'll give you the guidance, and that's like really all we want as Marines is like, hey, make the decision, give us what are your priorities, a little bit of guidance, got it, boss, like we'll go attack. And so it was a great team overall. I mean, even like S1. Don't want to forget the Edge. Like, I mean, it just all across. I spent a ton of time with the chief, right? The medical officer and the chief. I'm talking to them all the time as the OPSO, and so just working with the staff, thinking through the different warfighting functions is certainly probably where the most like professional growth happened over the last couple of years.
Yeah, I think just to echo some of that, like you said, I mean, as a lieutenant, as a company grade officer in a combat arms, especially an infantry community, everything is just tactics, 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 blow, 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 kill, 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 ha, 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 and the amount, and especially with the long war, the way it was being, executed with these massive iron mountains. I mean, it really was just like, well, how quickly can you get it to me? It wasn't a matter of like can, it was when, like, and the answer is now. Um, and so the idea of having to synchronize the various warfighting functions was really kind of more of a textbook thing. It's the answer to the quiz. But once you get in country, man, it's like it's tactics. And I've definitely found coming back to the battalion in garrison and then being, especially in a major subordinate command, where we're handing units to support maneuver. I'm not doing this thing anymore. It really was a matter of like, hey, chaps, what is it you actually do on a
Yeah.
day-to-day basis? So I found that fascinating. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, I spent a ton of time, that, yeah, even think about the chaps again. That's another staff member that I am integrating, and then I'm glad you kind of brought up enablers, attachments. Like a lot of my time, I spent thinking about what capabilities do we need, how can I integrate the various enablers, and a lot of that kind of starts with me creating a demand signal, and then a lot of it's like sometimes they'll get tasks, but a lot of it's personal relationships and interfacing and handshakes and trying to do the good dude thing. And so getting tracks to come out and support your training, getting LAR to come out and support your training, getting RD to come out and set up an FDC for you, and getting air to play. And so a lot of my time, that was a great point. Like I spent like interfacing with adjacent, like higher and adjacent,
Hmm.
which is something you you know as a company commander, those people after the OPSO has kind of done that,
Yeah.
they come up and they're like, hey, I'm attached to Lima company, and so then you work with them there at the tactical level, but actually integrating those guys into your plans and your operations, there's a ton of coordination that goes into that. So
Yeah.
it's a,
And I found it really interesting, I guess, to go back. We were talking about, staring at the wall or looking at the walls of the CP and just sort of getting enamored, not just in Marine Corps history, but in the unit history. And I wonder what it was like for you. Like you said, you look, you're like, oh, actually, that was me. And now, we've been out of the long war now for a minute. And so I got to imagine that when, Tom Schuemans show up on deck and check in, there's got to be a sense of like, holy shit, that's him. Um, and so like, and I guess going back to that idea, like the teep is always there. Like it's always going to be redlining. It's always going to be turning it up to 11. When or how and like, what is sort of your thought process as you take in that mentorship piece, which is so critical, especially for folks such as yourself who are going to really be people that these young Marines are going to be looking up to. What is it that you would do, or how would you appreciate and take in all of that so that you don't let the teep run the day and that you are falling back into that really super important part, like, of the mentor? Did you just schedule more calls, or like how did you work that?
yeah. I mean, I probably much to the Stefano's chagrin, like I'm a big PME guy, and so like I like history. I like reading books, and so I I get to kind of set the schedule, and so you
Yeah.
got like a Monday morning war fighting club that I think was the bane of everybody's existence because we like 6:30 or something, and so uh, you know the emphasizing. I had dozens, probably more than dozens, many dozens of opportunities to bring the history to life and to talk about the people that are on the walls. And so, Banshee's the sniper platoon, so I get to talk about Matt Abate during, on December 2nd.
Mm.
They invited me out to their last sniper screener to kind of talk to the candidates who are applying, and I got to talk about a little bit what this unit meant to me. And I go Kilo companies out on a range, and I get to go link up with Kilo and talk to them about it. And I have stories about every company, and because my friends all served in these, and so I know Marines like by name who did incredibly heroic things within each of these platoons and companies. And so, like, really kind of that is something that's really meant a lot to be able to share that. And then there's two things here is one that I would constantly remind the staff that everything we do is to support a lance corporal who is at the point of violence, and so don't ever mother F the companies, or like you are sitting here in your freaking office fighting your computer. Like there's a 18-year-old with 100 pounds of gear who's hungry, hot, hasn't slept in 3 days, who's like shooting live rounds, and like that is who we exist to support. And so repeatedly vectoring and setting that azimuth so that the staff never forgets that it's this whole thing is because I have seen and witnessed what these young men are willing to do and how selfless they are and the kind of sacrifice they're willing to make. And we owe them our best every day. And so you may not see it when you're the S4 or the S6, but that's why we exist, is to set that Marine up for success. And every time they show up at the range and every time they go to the Philippines or the Korea for another training exercise, I hope they just like show up and they just fall in on the range, right? And it's like it was like magic, like
Mm-hmm.
they'll know that the Wizard of Oz behind the curtain has
Yeah.
hundreds of painful hours to put all that in place. And if that's the case, they just show up and they're able to train. Like that's us doing our job. And so that was really important. Then the other thing that I think I really integrated and was zealous about is pushing information down to them, down to the lowest level. And it's like it doesn't matter if we all know, like the worst thing for morale is like Marines people just need to know why and like
Mm-hmm.
what purpose. And I was like, I was fighting in, the Marine Corps' favorite word is like multi-domain, or I should just say like the DoD at large. If you put multi-domain in front of it, you're good, right? So I was like competing in every domain. I was getting the word out through social media, getting the word out through email, posting flyers, doing town halls. I would go to the smoke pit and pull the Marines in. Like it was like I was adamant that we don't leave the command and staff and be like, well, it's nice that now we all know. It's like, no, like the measure of effectiveness is like, do your junior Marines all know?
Yeah.
And I'm a very like flat kind of environment guy where I'm really comfortable talking to the troops. And so like I will go and tell them and like, hey, the plan is all up here and the plan is actually exists in a computer somewhere. Let me get you read in on what we're doing. And so that was another thing that I really tried to emphasize is to get the word down to the lowest level to the troops by any means. And I would beat everybody up on that, to make sure that we were communicating, keeping the troops informed.
I think that's kind of a universal feeling where people want to know what the hell's going on, whether it's the Marine Corps or even in a small business. The people want to know what the planners have in mind and what their purpose is. It's so important to give your buy-in to know what the larger purpose is.
Yeah, people are, it's Marines and grunts, like they don't mind hardship. They don't mind adversity. They just want to know why. And so, like, if I'm cold, if I'm hungry, if I'm tired, if I have to walk far with this heavy weight, like, I just need to know why. And like, sometimes it's a bit of a leap of kind of connecting some of the things you do, and you don't want to, ever patronize them because they're smart, and like, if you're just blowing smoke up their ass, like, they'll know. But like, so not everything can you give like the best. Sometimes the insanity of the bureaucracy of the organization
Right.
does have a vote, but most times you can make that connection. It's just officers and staff NCOs get complacent or lazy or don't have the desire to communicate that kind of stuff, because like, they know, and they're like, hey, just do it. And sometimes, like, that is the response, like, just do it. But it only under exigent circumstances should be like, just do it. Don't be lazy. Take the time to communicate. And yeah, these Marines will move mountains. They'll go to the end of the earth for you. At least we owe them a little bit of the reason why. And so, yeah, that was something I was pretty adamant about.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to be said for that. It's also very, I mean, I know we use terms like transparency a little flippantly these days in our culture, but there is a certain sense that, like, hey, you may not be like soliciting for my buy-in, but just the fact that you took the time to explain it, even if I don't like the answer, you at least took the time to do it. And so it's sort of like you said, it sort of flattens that very rigid structure that's so easy to fall in on.
Yeah,
Um,
and again, it just takes you walking the lines, uh, and not forgetting who we support.
yeah, while you're doing it, yeah. And what is that like? So I guess to fast forward now to where you're at, like, how is that being at a joint school? Is that experience helpful? Or do you find that our allies and partners are looking to you to sort of help them in that regard? Or are you feeling like I'm in a very different world now?
I, I it is different, but in many ways it's the same. I think the Marine Corps does a great job uh, planning at the battalion level, and so you can be if you're, my S6 is lieutenant,
Mhm.
my S4 is junior captain, S2 junior captain guys, and they understand like how planning works, and they maybe didn't at the beginning of their billet, just like I wasn't an expert at the beginning, but by the end of that workup and deployment, I think you can plug a junior captain into a larger planning effort, and they'll be like, oh, I know like what we do during this section of problem framing, or mission analysis and co-ed development and war gaming. Like, that I've seen this, and so I think the Marine Corps does a really good job in preparing you for that. And I'll also say that the Naval War College, while it doesn't necessarily do the planning identical to what we do here in JPME2 for the joint planning, it was a good primer. I have a distinct advantage at this course in that it's so much of the course is oriented on the joint planning process, which very much represents the Marine Corps planning process. And so, you know, I have been living and breathing planning. And so we start off in this course talking about campaign planning, which I've been part of larger campaign plans and wrote, even though campaign plans aren't appropriate for the battalion level, we still wrote them at the battalion level, or doctrinal at the battalion level, I should say. We are doing contingency planning, and I did a lot of that on the deployment. And now we're doing crisis planning. And so like the idea of being an OPT, and having to, like, what does that cadence look like? What does a plan to plan look like? I think I have, especially as the OPSO, it's like this is the world I live in. Whereas a lot of my the different services, you know, like you very much specialize in terms of like if you're comm, you kind of really nerd out on signals and sky waves, but you may not often contribute in a joint in the OPT in terms of like taking something from being a problem to having an order. You know, like how to take a problem and then deliver an operations order. Like that was my bread and butter, and so I think that is super helpful. Just how familiar I am presently with the planning process, in particular in relation to the course outcomes and objectives here. You know, the other, so the course I think really intends to do two things. Is it tends to get you familiar with the joint planning process so that you can go serve on a joint staff, CENTCOM, UCOM, and step in and speak the language. And then the other intent of JPME 2 is acculturation. And so getting everybody familiar with how the other services think, act, and I was certainly impressed by the quality of officers from across the joint force, and it doesn't matter what uniform you wear. I have been impressed with just the talent within the force, and every branch of service I've been taken aback by just how sharp and talented a lot of these individuals are. So that's been encouraging to see that throughout this course. And so it's good knowledge. I do feel like if I had to go report to CENTCOM tomorrow, like I wouldn't be like totally lost in the sauce, which is
How many different countries are represented there that you can think of offhand?
Yeah, I think this cohort wasn't as significant as previous cohorts. There's 3 or 4 countries, and I think they're mostly like countries from Asia. So you know, Korea. And I'll tell you what again, I'm going to go back to the Naval War College, because the inter-service representation at the War College was just phenomenal, and the amount of foreign officers in the ranks down there in Newport was really impressive. On this base is like the NATO headquarters for the U.S. So I mean, everywhere you go, there's people from all over NATO, and so you know, I'm rubbing shoulders, elbows, or whatever with the with international partners every day, just by going to the PX or walking down the road or at the gym, you know. So there's a guy here from Norway that I just like worked out with once, and then now, you know, so like now I'm learning about special forces in Norway, you know, which is not something I probably would have happened in San Mateo, you know. And so there's a lot of benefit there.
Good experiences for later.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you had mentioned earlier too, you know, talking to the various unit, you know, subunits where you're at 3-5, and specifically the sniper platoon and Staff Sergeant Abate. How is everything going with PB Abate?
Yeah, so Sergeant Matt Abate, Navy Cross recipient, killed in action 2 December. we've now run our return to base program for 3 years, and we now have a permanent patrol base that while the organization owns it, I would say everybody who served really is a has a key to this place. And so the return to base program is built around shared interest. And so whether you're into jujitsu or weightlifting or books or music or art or fly fishing, that part of the premise of when I founded the organization is I wanted to be accessible, because I found so many of the resources to veterans were often felt excluding, and so it's like, hey, you're not special forces enough, you're not wounded enough, you're not PTSD'd enough, you didn't go to combat enough, and there were all these barriers to entry. And then a lot of the resources are kind of right a bang. They're like very crisis oriented. And so I wanted to found a place where service was your ticket to admission, where we recognize that like all service matters, and anybody who's raised their right hand, it's their patrol base, and there's no I was just at our patrol base. And so many GWAT veterans in particular have been conditioned to think that if you didn't kill Osama bin Laden, like you don't rate, like you're not a real. And so whether that's through social media or the movies or the books, they've kind of come to the conclusion that this is what you'll hear. This is the narrative. Well, I was just an airman. I just did C-130s. I was just a mechanic. It's like, be proud. Like, guess what?
Yeah.
We need mechanics, and we need guys, and so like, you don't have to marginalize your service. You don't have to make anything up. But you can say, I did 4 years. I didn't go to combat, and I'm proud as hell, right? And I would say like, good and great. We've got a place for you. It's called Patrol Base Abate. Come on out. And so with this kind of inclusivity in mind, I didn't want to narrowly tailor our programming to the things that like Tom Schueman just likes. Like Tom Schueman likes books, and Tom Schueman is a grunt, right? So he likes hiking and reading books. And so like I didn't want to make it the hiking, reading books organization. Everybody's thing, and then you look at a lot of organizations and they're pretty narrowly like fly fishing or hunting. And I think all those things are really cool and great. That might not appeal to everybody. And so what we try to say is like, what is the thing that you're into? Well, we'll resource it, and you can do it out in Montana at our patrol base. And so that's why I'm not a golfer, but we do a golf club. I'm not a musician, but the music club comes out, right? I wish I could golf. I've never fly fished. We bring the fly fishing people out, right? And so it's not about like what the organization necessarily isn't driving the agenda there.
Programming, yeah.
In which programs we run, we say, hey, if you do the thing and you would like to do it in Montana and you want to volunteer to lead that club, you're now the crocheting club captain. And if we'll put it out there like, hey, veteran crocheters, we're gonna meet out in Montana. If you want, like, sign up. And if 10 to 15 people sign up, guess what? The crocheting club is gonna meet out at our patrol base, and they're gonna knit scarves in the most beautiful scene that you can ever imagine, And so that shared interest really kind of opens up the idea is you build that sense of community, you find that tribe, and you reignite your sense of purpose while you're out at our patrol base. And so much of that is dependent on communication. And when you and I share the same interest, we both talk jujitsu or we both talk powerlifting, that facilitates building those bonds. And then it's like,
right.
Okay, we share a common interest, we kind of speak that same language, and we're both veterans, so there's a little bit of trust probably inherently there. And so then we've got all our programs are structured similarly in terms of the pillars of our programs, but they're all based around different interests. And then the idea is, you leave the patrol base and you found that you've reconnected and you found that tribe, and you fill a sandbag on your last day and you say, I'm going to commit to honoring someone or something, with laying this foundation of the sandbag. But now I'm going back out on patrol, and it's not, we're not retreating. That's why I don't like calling it a retreat, because we're not retreating. We're not trying to be separate from society. We're trying to say, like, hey, we owe it to our families to come back from this patrol base better moms, better dads, better husbands, better wives. Go back into your community, to your homes, to your churches, join your local chapter, and continue to find places to serve. It's the idea that we are men and women. Our character is really central to our character, and our identity is the idea of service. It doesn't have to be in uniform. And so we try to use the local chapters to say, you've been to the patrol base, now go out and serve in your community, serve in your family again. And that's kind of why we run the two programs, the local chapters and the return to base program. And even if you haven't been out to the patrol base yet, and you want that access to other veterans, it's like, hey, there's a social and a service component to our local chapters. And so once a quarter, they're going to the soup kitchen. They're showing, they're fighting that narrative that veterans are damaged, broken, and holding up cardboard signs to say we're not. Like, we're here, and we're at the women's shelter, and we're at the soup kitchen, and we're cleaning up the beaches. Like, that's who we are. We're men and women of service, whether we did it for 4 years or 40 years. And to be able to do that back again with fellow veterans, I think is really important. So going into our fourth year of programming this summer, with this beautiful ranch that we have up in Montana. And to me, it's just so important that everybody who's raised their right hand knows, like, there's a place where I belong. And it's not a conceptual place. It's a real physical location. And I'm eligible. And that dirt there, that terra firma in the mountains of Montana, like, I have a claim to it. It's my patrol base. And I think for many, many generations to come, veterans are going to rally there and enter friendly lines. And so, yeah, it's a special place, and great things going on at PB Abate.
That's amazing. Just sorry, Nancy, real quick. So I think since the last time we talked, the local chapter thing was still sort of in the concept phase, right? Is that something that's been relatively recent? Is the local chapter aspect of PB Abate?
It's always been active to some degree, but it's largely dependent on volunteers.
Yeah.
PB has 2 full-time hires. We're servicing several thousand veterans with 25 local chapters and running 10 robust programs out in the middle of Montana per year, and 2 people are doing that full time. And so we ask a ton of our volunteers, because right now, just based on the resource environment, we don't have the ability to add any full-time additional hires. But so if I'm leading PB Abate Chicago, that there's some manpower and hours that go into that saying, like, hey, troops, like, we're gonna go to the probably the Cubs game, although I'm a White Sox fan. Like, let's go to the Cubs, right? And like, next month we're gonna go to the Cubs game. Then we're gonna go we're gonna run the lakefront, the following month, and then we're gonna go do the soup kitchen for our and so, like, that takes some real effort and talent to do that. So right now we have 25, and it's fluctuated up to like almost 40, and then kind of been down to about 10. But yeah, so right now there's 25 chapters that every month are meeting, whether they're doing their social or their service component. And every service one has a social component, so you're kind of doing it still with everybody. So like San Antonio went to the rodeo, PB Abate San Antonio. Like PB Abate Dallas is doing a ruck run, and then the following month PB Austin has some kind of service. And so that's like every weekend, the troops are rallying around the country under the banner of PB Abate, and that commute, and they're staying in that community, which we know is a protective factor, and it's super important to mental health. So it's been pretty awesome.
That is awesome.
So, okay, I've got 2 questions. the first question, was it was it always your objective that it would be these kind of communities, or did that evolve over time? You know, when you first came up with the concept of PB Abate, that you would have these sort of individual groups driven by what interests were.
Yeah, the main effort initially was to develop a world-class program, a top-tier program uh, out at our base in Montana as our kind of hallmark marquee program. And the methodology behind that is all informed by the literature, like the academic, scientific mental health literature. And so, I was studying at Georgetown and reading a bunch about this because I was writing about moral injury and PTSD, and then I taught at the Naval Academy and I continued to study. And so, it's I understood what the risk factors are and what the literature says are the protective factors, and so we built. That is where the return to base program around the common interest and that's Dr. Jonathan Shea, who wrote Achilles in Vietnam. He's kind of the preeminent scholar on PTSD, mental health, moral injury with veterans, and so that was certainly the initial effort. I always had that supporting effort that it can't just be something that you do one time, and the fact that it's like a straw, you can only get so many people out to Montana
Right.
Right.
at a time. And so I always, it was always really important to me that it wasn't just a static thing that just happened once. It's something that is enduring and it's sustainable, and you can touch it where you live. And it's not like, oh, well, hundreds of people are applying for these programs every year. It's like, I didn't get to do the book club this year. Sebastian Younger was the guy. I guess I'll just have to wait until next year, and then maybe I'll get my number called. It's like, well, no, you can join this community right now, where you're at. And so it was always going to be a complementary effort, but to build a program and a good one, that kind of, and again, based on the amount of resources we have, that was kind of the focal point. And now I would argue you could put our program out there in Montana against any program that's out there, and you'd come away and say that this is top notch. And so investing more energy now that's kind of where of course it can always improve. Of course, we'll always refine it and try to make it better each time. But now that's in a pretty good spot, trying to focus our attention and to get in the this other line of effort, the local chapters up and running and thriving. So they've always kind of been complementary in my mind. It's just one thing first, and then
Well, and my other question, so Vic and I have talked to a couple of people recently on the show who have had some interaction with PB Abate, and everyone had such great things to say about it. And also, listening to you talk about all the community groups and the activities that they're doing, both service and social. So what does that feel like to you when you're getting these reports from people about how meaningful and impactful it is?
yeah. So gratitude, uh, it's humbling. I mean, I've received hundreds of messages from folks who, and many of them have expressed it in like a terms of like a life-saving resource. And I founded PB Bate after I had so many suicides, and the value of one person staying in the fight, of that one life, and that one person saying this was the like what I mean. It's just so grateful that person reached out, joined the community. I'm so humbled that I get to play a small part in such a incredible organization, and so yeah, I think PB Abate has broad appeal in that if you served, you're eligible. That's it. Like, you are eligible, and then like we do the things that you do, and we're in the places you're at, and so a lot of organizations have a great service and social kind of component to them. A lot of good VSOs out there doing great work like that. And then a lot of programs, organizations out there have like their kind of marquee programs that but few of them do both, I think. And I think that's a little bit of the magic is that we do the local chapters and the work out at the patrol base. We're doing the things that people are doing anyways, and so like that's exciting. And it's just a real welcoming environment. It's not it's I've been so adamant about it's not competition. There's no like hierarchy. There's no like butt sniffing. I always say like the dogs, try to sniff each other out and say like what'd you do right. It's like if you want to join the Navy SEAL Foundation, like join the Navy SEAL Foundation. This is just like like this person, they were admin. Like doesn't matter. They served, and so like don't come to PB Abate and try to start some kind of I had more trauma because I did this thing, or I'm more high speed. It's like, then go join that other group that does that. And so I think that is really encouraging for folks who there's a need for community. There's a need for purpose. And it's a universal need, like you pointed out, like this kind of stuff is like human need to know the why. And I would just argue that it's a little bit, it's intensified through service. And so the demand is high. And it seems to be doing incredible stuff for the troops. And I just at the end of the day, I'm really grateful and humbled just to be a part of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think I think you guys started off sort of with that. You guys had that special sauce because of what you were saying. Like, you weren't focused on sort of a niche thing, which there's nothing wrong with that. Like, if lakeside crochet is the thing, then that's awesome. And for all those folks that love lakeside crochet, too, I love you guys for loving it. But the fact is that you didn't focus on the niche, and you didn't do, because I mean, shit, even within the VA, service isn't enough a lot of times. Like if you get a BCD, man, the VA really ain't gonna be the place for you. And especially when a lot of people who were getting other than honorable and below sort of discharges, it was related to trauma and things of this nature. The fact that you guys have been so inclusive and you're not niche, I think has been really a special thing within the VSO community. And so I'm so happy to see you guys expanding the way that you are.
Appreciate that. It also makes it like tough to because it takes a more nuanced pitch. It's like, so what makes you guys unique? Are you the Navy SEALs? Do your people, are they missing a leg? Like if you say like I'm a Navy SEAL, then I'm going to give you $10, right? And if you say I'm a leg, you're going to give me $10. It's like, well, wait, what makes you unique? Like what makes us unique is that we're inclusive to everybody, and we do this.
Mhm.
And so it's like, well, why is that important? It's like, because if you look at the VA suicide data, it'll tell you that non-combat veterans are twice as likely to commit suicide as combat veterans. If you look at the VA suicide data, it'll tell you that the National Guard has the highest suicide rates among all services. And it's like, so we didn't need. It's really great, and I'm thankful that these other resources exist for these sub communities. But like, I'm here to try to provide some protective factors against a real problem that's facing the veteran community. And so like, that's why we're inclusive the way that we are. That's why we're built the way we are. And like, so after a couple of minutes, you might say like, oh, like that sounds like something I want to give $5 to. But on the front, it's because I'll never allow us to frame ourselves as these poor damaged, feel bad for me. I want to say like, hey, we got people who are fit for full duty and they're doing great. We got people who are struggling, and everything in between. But don't pity us, just if you think service matters, then consider supporting PB Abate. And if you think, veterans being able to have community and reignite their purpose is probably something beneficial, then support PB Abate. But I'm not going to say give you a sad story of how we're just these poor victims, and you should just write us a check, and which makes it a little bit tougher in a very, very competitive VSO space to
Yeah.
get the checks.
Yeah. Well, Tom, man, I really appreciate you taking the time. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about Always Faithful. You got just a couple minutes? Just how have things been going since the book release? There was a ton of attention on it. How, like, what's sort of been the glide slope with you guys, you and Zach and your team with the release of the book?
Yeah, the book was well received, and it was a very cool experience getting to go to New York and travel the country and go on Jocko and Good Morning America and all that. That was cool. But I'll say Zach's family is safe. They're in America and they're doing okay. So like that's first and foremost like the most important thing. Unfortunately, even with the being on the cover of the New York Times, even with being on the national media, even with senators' support, etc., Zach's SIV was denied for a final time last March with no appeal. So it's a real injustice. He meets every aspect of the qualifications for the SIV program, and the fact that the program was actually designed to support literally people like him.
Right. Yeah.
And we failed to honor that. That's an injustice. And so he's had to apply for asylum. And his asylum case is still pending. It's been pending for over 10 months. And so he still lives with this kind of weight over his head. His status is not certain. And that's a tough way to live. And the fact that he has to go through the asylum route to begin with is a disgrace, And so, but the experience of writing the book, publishing the book, that was great. For me, it was always about having Zach be able to share his story and to be able to tell the story of a few heroes of mine. And so I think, with that in mind, that it met my intent, at least, that people got to hear about this guy and hear about the war from a guy who lived the war, not a guy who visited the war for just a little bit. And this country, Afghanistan, was like in the forefront of the American mind, or maybe not the forefront, but part of the American mind, for 20 years. And let this guy actually tell you what that place was, and so in some really nice ways and some really tough ways, he shares that experience. And so that was always central to why I agreed to do the book, and then to be able to tell the stories of some of my heroes, my mom, my Marines. That was really important to me. So thankful that we got the book out there. But before we jump off the call, you asked me about how things were with the fleet and how going back to 3.5. I would be remiss if I didn't mention probably the most important thing is, you hear all kind of rhetoric today about the state of the force, or the quality of the troops, and TikTok this or whatever. All I can tell you is like the United States Marine is as good as now as it ever was, as he ever was, and the Marines that are in our ranks right now are incredible men and women, and they're just as good, if not better, than they've ever been. And so I spent 2 years in the fleet, and if I I gave you a bunch of impressions, but if I give you one paramount chief impression, it's that I'm damn proud to be able to serve such fine young men and women that are out there, and the state of the force, despite what you see on social media, it's phenomenal. These Marines are just incredible, and just proud and humbled to be able to serve them.
And thank you for saying that. We don't say it enough, and I have absolutely no doubt. I know we've talked about it, and I've talked about it with other guests on the show, but like I just remember when we got back from my company command tour in Iraq, when we got everybody together and just looking at those young men, and it was men at the time, but just seeing guys who when I was their age, like the hardest decision I had to make was, do I keep drinking even though I'm sick, or do I try to fake the funk and go to class? Like that was as hard as it got for me. And to see them like in charge of millions of dollars of equipment, upwards of 13 lives are in their hands. Actual like national defense strategy, like our national strategy in a lot of ways would hinge on decisions they would make in some of the toughest situations you can imagine. And so just being so impressed, and this was the emergence of we were coming out of Gen X. I guess these were millennials, and there was a lot of talk about that generation not being up to the task. And it's just like, you guys are full of shit. You're like, put them in these situations and you'll be impressed. So I have no doubt that you're seeing much of the same thing, but I appreciate someone like you saying that, because it just isn't, it is not said enough.
It's my honor and pleasure to be able to say it, and I'm just thankful to be on their team.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for everything you do. What do you got next? I guess you've got a couple more months of joint PME.
Yep, I'll finish up school here. I'll report back to 3-5, check out of the battalion, probably work at the regiment or division for a couple months, and I'll PCS to training command. I don't know what I'll be doing there yet here in Quantico. Just started my research a little bit. It's pretty intimidating. There's 17 commands that fall under training command.
Yeah.
They're not small ones. I'm sure I'll be hooking and jabbing. I'll be on the battalion command board. I'll be on the command selection board this summer. So I should find out, I think probably in August, if I get selected for command. If I do, then I would anticipate moving again the following summer to going into command, which would be awesome. So
yeah, well, awesome. Well, hopefully you're on the main side and not the other side of the 95 when you come out to TCOM, and then we'll actually get you in the studio. And
yeah,
but that would be great. So, well, best of luck to you finishing up Joint Command. Look forward to having you here in Q-Town. For those who don't know, check out Always Faithful. You can get that at Amazon. It's
great
actually
book.
It's on our reading list through the Marine Corps Association. You can get links to it there. PB Abate, check them out, support them, do everything you can. Lieutenant Colonel Schueman, Tom, thank you, man, for coming on and spending an afternoon with us, catching up.
thanks. Good some summer 5.
An axiom is that those who do not learn from history are doomed to repeat it. Another axiom is that we sweat in peace so that we don't bleed in war. Here at the Marine Corps Association, we fully understand both. That is why we offer through our professional development page on our website a comprehensive catalog of battle studies, tactical and ethical decision games, and war games to ensure that not only do we learn from the past, but we embrace the thoughts and decisions that influence the outcomes of some of the greatest actions of the Marine Corps. We have tools and techniques that will enhance both unit training as well as enable comprehensive self-study. Check out all that the Marine Corps Association has to offer on our website. Go to mca-marines.org/professional-development. That's mca-marines.org/professional-development, and get your reps and sets in. Scuttlebutt is a production of the Marine Corps Association. You have heard the voices or contributions from Major Vic Rubel, USMC retired, Nancy Litchman and or William Truding, and Lieutenant Colonel Tom Schueman, USMC. Ty Frazier is the editor, sound engineer, and technical producer. The Marine Corps Association is not an agency of the U.S. government. The opinions expressed in this episode are the personal views of the participants and do not reflect the official position of the United States Marine Corps, Department of Defense, or the Marine Corps Association.